Okay. Well, sweet. Well, here we are again, episode 3, ready to knock it out the park. You feeling good?
I am.
All right. Relax, chill. It's been a beautiful day.
It has. And I didn't go golfing. I don't know why.
What? Man, that's a new thing. So what did you do today?
Nothing.
Nothing? Oh, man, that you had to have done something. I mean, it's 64 degrees. You're wearing a sweater. You're looking nice. You got a button up. Just hung out the house?
Just stayed in the house almost all day.
Oh man, that's what COVID does to you, bud. That's one of those things. But hey, so last time we talked a lot about the military, the cars. I can't even tell you this last week how many people I told that you used to drag race cars when you were in high school and down at airport number 2. And like so many people are stoked.
Well, I found out that was the 58 Ford we took to Mexico.
Oh,
I mean, the 58 Ford.
Okay.
And it was a black and red one, and it would move.
That's awesome. Was it a Fairlane or what was it?
Yeah, it was a Fairlane 500. That's what it was.
That is, I'm just telling you, like having a Ford Fairlane, that's a beautiful car.
Yeah, we liked it. I liked driving it, especially when I got in high school. When we got back, I was in the 9th grade when we left. And we had the car for a few years, so I drove it quite a bit. Oh. My dad was quite adamant that we did not have a car, and what he did is he told us that. When I came back from my mission, I still didn't have a car, and he said, well, you can buy a car, but then you're going to pay the insurance, you're going to pay all the repair bills and maintain it. If you drive my car, I'll take care of all the expenses. And I think it was kind of a control thing that he figured that if he could control the wheels, he could control me a little bit, which he was wrong, but anyway. So I opted to let him pay.
That's a pretty good deal. I know, like as far as like Liv, she's got a car, and I cover her gas and different things like that. So I mean, that's pretty cool that your dad would cover your gas and insurance and all those things. I mean, that stuff gets pricey.
Yeah, and it hasn't changed much. There's inflation. It goes through a lot. I mean, when I was a kid, gas was 25 cents a gallon, so it's gone up. But then I was making $2.35 an hour when I went to work for Eldon, so at Harrington. So you can, inflation-wise, it hasn't changed much.
I'll tell you that's. That's a pretty good deal, though. I mean, honestly, if you were making $2.35, because when I started my first job at 16, I started at $3.15 an hour. So you think about the difference between, when you started for Eldon, when I started at 16. So,
but you were 16, and I was 23, and was married and had a couple of kids. So it makes a difference.
No, definitely so. So speaking of, like you're driving that car in high school, different things like that. I mean, did you take it out on a lot of dates? Was it like, I mean, I think if I had a car like that, I'd probably, I can't even imagine it as less than a chick magnet. I mean, did you date a lot when you were in high school?
No.
Okay.
In fact, I went on a few dates. I didn't do very well at it, actually. I never went on a date ever where I asked somebody out. I was always lined up with somebody. Once I'd taken them out once, then repeat dates was a lot easier, and I did that a few times. But I'd graduated from high school before I ever kissed a girl.
Really?
But yeah, and
who was your first kiss?
Well, when I was, my brother went to Fort up in Washington during the Cuban crisis, and there was a family that lived just out of town that he got hooked up with. There was another guy, Grant Rentmeister, that lived down the street from us, and he had some relatives up there, and they lived in a little town called I'll be danged, a little town out of Oregon. No, geez, they lived in this is bad.
Hey, you know what? That's the thing. It's just like, doesn't matter. Don't worry about,
Because he can edit this out, right?
yeah, but don't worry about such, minute details. It's like, they just lived outside or in Oregon in a small little town.
Outside of it was in Washington, and it was out of Olympia is where they lived. And
Let me digress. Some of the hottest chicks I've ever seen have come out of Olympia, Washington. I'm just saying that. Utah and Olympia, Washington. It's like those small towns. So I'm sorry. Go ahead.
anyway, we left the day after graduation and drove up to Washington to visit my brother. And at the time, the '62 World's Fair was going on. And so me and my sister and Dad and Mom rode up there. And then my brother had me write this gal a couple of times. And she was 15 and I was 18. But she knew more about stuff than I ever did. Anyway, we went out to her, visit them at the farm. And she said, "You want to go for a ride on a horse?" And I said, "That'd be fine. Yeah, I'd like that." So we went for a ride, and she said, "Well, would you like to see the sawmill?" And I said, "Okay, whatever." So we start riding down this dirt road, and pretty soon the road turns into a path, and we come to a pile of sawdust is all there was. And she says, "I think the horse needs a rest." So we get off the horse, and the next thing you know, she's tickling and messing around. And the next thing I know, I'm laying on, rolling around in this sawdust on the ground. And she relaxed, and I was about 2 inches from her face, and she reached up and gave me a kiss. And so well, let's just say that about 45 minutes later, she said, "We better be getting back or my dad's going to come after us." And I found out how easy that it was. And after that, I never took, let's see, I think there was 2 women after that I took out that I never kissed on the first date.
My man.
But anyway, I had one gal one time when I was in high school that I got lined up with, and I called her up about a week or so later, and she said, I needed a date for Saturday night, and this was on Friday. So I says, "What are you doing tonight?" She says, "Oh, I'm helping my mother clean the house, and I have to dust the piano." And I says, "Well, what about tomorrow night then?" She says, "Well, it's a pretty big job, And I just started to laugh and hung up. But one of the funniest dates I ever took, it was when I was in high school. Was this? My brother was, like I said, it was called up during the Cuban crisis, and this gal moved in with my sister-in-law, so she wouldn't have to live alone. And she was a college student and freshman in college, and I was a senior in high school. And I used to go down every night, and they had a coal-burning furnace, and it was in the wintertime. I'd go down every night and take out the clinkers and fill up the stoker with coal.
What's a clinker?
A clinker is what's left over after the coal burns. It's the residue. And you have tongs that you pull them out of the furnace with because they're hot, and set them off aside and let them cool down.
And what do you do with a clinker once it's cooled down?
Well, when I was a kid at our house, we used to take them out. We just had a dirt driveway, and I used to take them out, and they'd break up, they'd crumble, and I'd put them in the driveway in the potholes and stuff. Down there, they just throw them out and, in the garbage is what they did.
Okay.
But anyway, I got quite fond of her. I was looking at her at afar, but I was a high school kid and she was a college kid. And 1 year at that age makes quite a difference. But I finally, by mutual arrangement between that and my sister-in-law, I took her out.
And which sister-in-law?
Now that was my oldest brother's wife,
Jean?
was Jean. Yeah.
Okay.
And anyway, started the night. I go to pick her up, and I was double dating with a friend of mine, old Steve Coates. And when I get there to pick her up, right on time, she was doing the dishes. And she wasn't quite ready yet. And so I had to finish doing the dishes while she went to get ready. So I was late picking up Steve and then we went up on the east side to pick her up. And started down the road and got pulled over for speeding by a cop. And so I jumped out and ran back, and he chewed me out like you can't believe, but he ended up turning me loose without giving me a ticket. So we go to the movie house, and we went to a drive-in movie.
Hell.
Well, you'll have to remember, I'd never kissed a girl, see? And at this time, and so anyway, I went to the drive-in movie, and I don't remember much about the show, but I went to leave and had a flat tire. So I got out and tried to open the trunk, and the key wouldn't open the trunk. I couldn't get the trunk open. So I knew that if I took the back seat out, there was a crawl space that I could get through. So I kicked everybody out of the back seat, my buddy and his date, and took the back seat out and crawled through and reached up and popped the trunk. And when I got back to take the spare tire out, the spare was flat. So I went over. By then, the parking lot was about empty, but the proprietor was still there. So I got him to run me over to a service station with the spare and pump it up. And when I got back, the bumper jack, the way the car was, the bumper jack wouldn't work so to get the tire off. So I went back, and he loaned me, he had a hydraulic jack, and I finally got the tire off. Well, then I decided to take, we finally got out of there. And I took my buddy's girlfriend home, and she lived up on the east side, and it was up in there in the avenues. And I always get lost up there anyway. So this was his first date with this gal. And he got out to walk her the door, and trying to be funny, I drove off and left him.
That is funny.
And then I couldn't find the house again. There weren't square blocks up there, and I drove around for 15 or 20 minutes trying to find him. And I finally found him. He wasn't too happy with me, but anyway, I ended up taking him home and was glad the night was over. I might add that I never took her out again when I was in high school. But anyway,
I can see how that might be hard to get a second date after that.
Yeah, it didn't turn out too good. It ended out though that I married her a few years later.
Oh, you was that Jeanette?
That was Jeanette. Yeah, it was.
Shut up.
You know what's funny is
Mind blown right now.
when I reminded her of it, and she never remembered anything about it. But it was devastating to me. But apparently, she thought it was funny, and it was no big deal to her.
That's pretty awesome. I had no idea.
Yeah, it's
That is a great story. That's cool. That's way cool.
anyway. Old Jeanette. That was when I left to go on my mission. I hadn't seen her for a long time, but my sister-in-law knew I liked her. And so when I left to go, my brother was in the reserves, and he was up in Evanston, Wyoming.
Which brother?
John, my
Okay.
oldest brother was Gene, and John. And anyway, he got special permission to come to. He was on weekend drills, and he got special permission to come home. So after the farewell was over at church on Sunday night, and I was going in the mission home on Monday morning. I drove him. I took him up there, and Gene lined us up. So Jeanette rode up with us, and we went up to Evanston, Wyoming, and came back. And by then it was probably, I don't know, 11, 12 at night before we got up there and back. And Dad had a 300-gallon gas tank out by the barn underneath this tree. And that's where we got our gas and stuff. So after I dropped my sister-in-law Jean off, I told Jeanette, I said, I don't think I got enough gas to get you home. She lived out in Hunter. So I pulled in the driveway and coasted out behind the barn to gas up, and there we stayed until the sun come up. It was like 5 o'clock in the morning. I said, I got to get going. And she says, well, what about the gas? And I said, I think I got enough to get you home. So I took her home, and Dad was not very happy with me, but because I only had about an hour before I had to leave to go up to go into the mission home.
Where was the mission home at?
It was an old hotel that was on. Let's see, it'd be on State Street, because it was on. It was Main Street. It was where they tore it down. That and the store and a couple other things when they built the conference center.
Okay.
So it was just up there.
Okay.
We were there for a week, and then we went down to the LTM, the language training mission, they called it. And I spent 3 months down there learning Spanish before I left to go on my mission.
What? Where was the LTM at? Was that in Provo? Or?
It was. I was the first one to go through the LTM. They had used it. Missionaries that had a hard time getting their visas and passports, they'd put them down there until they come through, and it went anywhere from a week to 2 or 3 months. And sometimes, if it went longer than 3 months, then they'd send them on an English-speaking mission somewhere. Like I had a friend of mine, he went to California for like 2 months. So it was almost 6 months before his passport come through. But apparently the missionaries that had gone through some training like that did substantially better than just going out there cold. So they started sending all of the Spanish-speaking missionaries down to the language training mission, and then would send them out. And it was there was a women's dorm down there that they converted into and that's where we stayed, was in this girls' dorm.
That's cool.
For a while.
Sorry, I'm just writing down a couple of notes because as we're going along, there's a couple of things that I've been thinking, and want to like circle back to,
Okay.
the World's Fair. So you went to the World's Fair.
Yeah, I took this. I went to the World's Fair with this gal. Her name was, we called her Willie, but her name was Wilhelmina Adele. And
That's a mouthful.
yeah, it is.
I would call her Willie too.
Yeah, and we called her Willie, and we went to the World's Fair and went up the Space Needle and all that stuff. It was quite exciting, actually.
So, where was it? Like, did they?
It was Oakville was the name of the town.
Okay.
Oakville, Washington is where they lived.
And where was the World's Fair at?
It was in Seattle.
So that's where the Space Needle came from.
Yeah, the Space Needle was in Seattle.
So, like, you were there when the Space Needle was first built
That's
for the
correct.
World's Fair.
Yeah, it was built for the 62 World's Fair.
Wow. Now that's cool. What I mean, because you think about it, and you think about the World's Fair and like all the stuff that comes out from it. The Ferris wheel, the Eiffel Tower, like all these things, the Space Needle. Like you were there, you were a part of that.
Yeah, it was a big deal. It was fun. Had a good time.
I bet. Well, you got your first kiss, you got to see the Space Needle. That's kind of a win-win.
It was funny. I was on the way back, and by then I was 18 years old, and there was me and my sister, and we were driving back.
Meth or I'm
Beth,
sorry,
there
meth.
was Beth was
Meth.
And anyway, we were driving, and Mom would stay awake. We drove straight through to home, so Mom would stay awake with Dad, and then Sis would stay awake with me. Well, they told me not to. Back then, there were no freeways or anything. They told me you don't go over 60 miles an hour while you're driving. And they had the interior light. The car would shimmy just a little teeny bit, and it would rattle this light. And so if I got over 60, got up around 65, this light would start to rattle. And so my sister would hold it from rattling so that I could drive 70, 75 miles an hour until her arm got so tired from holding it because it was right in the center of the ceiling. And then I'd slow down to 60 until her arms rested a little bit, and then up we'd go again. And Dad woke up and he said, "Whoa, we've made good time." And I said, "Well, that's because I'm a good driver, I guess." Anyway.
That's awesome. I still can't believe that's so cool. Going to the World's Fair. The other question I was going to ask you about is just the gas tank at behind the barn. I remember as a kid the gas pump.
Right.
Was that?
That's it. That was the tank was just off to the side of that. The old garage, as you remember it. But that was a chicken coop, and it was in between there and the barn back in there. And I didn't exactly pull next to the pump when I pulled back there, you see.
Mm-hmm.
I was kind of out of sight, out of mind when I went back there with Jeanette.
No,
But when what happened is when they started jerking out all of those gas tanks, my little brother went down there and pulled it out because otherwise you had to have a EPA come out and did all this stuff. And so to begin with, I filled it up with water. And then he came and pulled it out before you were just a little teeny kid when they did that.
Yeah, no, I remember that gas pump, sitting out there for forever. I think you took it down when you put up the basketball standard.
Could have been. I gave it to a friend of mine that was. He collected gas pumps and stuff, and so I didn't want it, so I just gave it to him.
That's cool. That's somebody. Yeah, I would. You'll have to give me his name. That's one thing I wouldn't mind hunting down. That's one of those. My kids always say, "Oh, that's my childhood." It's like, yeah, that gas tank. Like I remember that thing. Red, busted, the dials. I never understood what it was for, but I swear you took it out when you put up the basketball standard. When it was basically, I remember it was a telephone pole, and you just nailed a basketball hoop to the back of it.
Yep, that's it. There was a switch in the house and that's another reason I didn't want to go get gas that night, because you had to go in the house to turn on the switch to put juice to it so that people wouldn't come and help themselves to the gas.
No, that makes sense. So you went down to the LTM. Sorry, I'm going to get back to where we were at. I just had to digress on those 2 points.
That's fine.
So you went down to the LTM. You were down there for 3 months. Now, were you 19 when you went into the MTC? Or I know you were talking about earlier that John, when he went on his mission, he had to be 20.
Right. Yeah, they lowered the age from 20 to 19, and that's I was 19 when I was down there. Yeah.
So when Bob went on his mission, was he 19 or was he 20?
You know what? I think that he was probably 19 because he left. He's 4 years older than I am. And he left. He went on his mission. Into the military and was gone for 6 months, and then came back. And then he left on his mission, and he was gone for 2.5 years. And
because 6 months for the military.
No, he was 2.5 years on the mission. Back then. If you went English speaking, it was 2 years, but if you went foreign, it was 2.5 years.
Man, that's kind of a raw deal.
So mine was I cut 3 months off of mine because I was 3 months down to the LTM, and then 2 years after. So I was gone for 27 months.
Dude, that's baller. Like no wonder you had so many. No wonder you were blessed with such amazing children. Because you served like more than a full mission.
That's I agree about the wonderful children, but I don't know about.
You're just buttering me up now.
Yeah, but there you go. Anyway,
that's crazy. So Bob served for 2.5, and you served for 2 years, 3 months. So,
my sister was 2 years, even though she went Spanish speaking. I might as well tell this story. When I was down at the LTM, I was always kind of a little bit of a rebel when I was growing up.
What? I don't see that.
But anyway, 3 of us got called to the same mission, one right after the other. Bob, he was called to the Andes mission, and then my sister was called and was down there when I was there, and then I was called. My brother got released the night of my farewell, and back then they released them out in the mission field, and so they could travel or do whatever they wanted on the way home. And so he stopped, and the Andes mission included Peru, Bolivia, Ecuador, and Chile when he was called. And then they cut off Chile from the Andes mission and made it a mission of their own. And so he stopped in Peru on his way home, and then went up to Machu Picchu, and he came home after I'd been a week in the mission home, and was then down to the LTM. So I called him on the phone and talked to him, and he said, "I'd love to come and take you to lunch." But he was the straightest arrow you ever met in your life. And he said, "You ask your mission president over to the LTM, and if he gives you permission, then I'll come and take you to lunch." And I said, "I'd love that." So I went to the mission president and asked him, and he said, "Absolutely not." He said, "The problem is I can't have all of these visitors and stuff coming down here. So you're just going to have to see him at the mission, at the airport when you leave, because I can't make any exception. I understand where you're coming from, but I can't make any exception. And I said, okay, thank you, President. I appreciate that. I can understand. So then I called my brother on the phone and I said, I talked to the mission president. He said it'd be fine. He said, but he told me to tell you that he didn't want you coming up to the mission home. Meet me off campus and down by it was a Smith Field House at that time. And as it turned out, there was an odd number, so I had 2 companions. So my companions, they went along with me, and we went down, and I met my brother, and we went out to lunch, and then we went out by Saratoga Springs and went rabbit hunting, and my 2 companions, they went to a movie, and we had an agreed time to be back, and we met, and then I went back to the mission home, and nobody was the wiser. But anyways,
Except God.
he forgave me.
Oh, I just kidding. I know.
But anyway, it was. And I got in a little bit of trouble down in South America too, because my sister was down there with me, and so I took her to lunch when it was.
Which sister?
Now that was Beth, and we went to lunch, and I got called in and said, "You can't take the lady missionaries out to lunch." I said, "It's my sister." He says, "Well, nobody else knows that," and I said, "I do." So, but anyway, they didn't argue with me. They just sent me about 500 miles south, and that was the end of that. But anyway.
So, your homie, Steve Coates, that you went on the day with Jeanette.
Yeah.
Where did he serve?
He served he was in the same mission with me, actually.
That's what I'm saying, man. That mission had
Yeah,
that's amazing.
It worked out really quite. In fact, they put us in the same, there were 6 of us living together, and he was in the same apartment with me for a while. And so back then the rules were a lot less strict.
You ruined it for me.
Not exactly, but anyway, we had a lot of fun together. It wasn't, I didn't do anything that was against the rules, but we went horseback riding together, and we used to spend a lot of time on the beach together, and they told us that we could go anywhere we wanted to go as long as we were back by 6 or 7 o'clock in the evening on our day off, and they encouraged us to go and visit the ruins and stuff, and so we did, and we kind of stretched that a little bit. We figured if we made it in the same day, we'd be all right. And so one time we left at midnight, and I come walking back into the apartment midnight, but in the same day. So we went clear up in the tops of the Andes Mountains, and I bought some alpaca rugs and a couple other things. It was a real experience, actually.
That's awesome. No, I remember the alpaca rugs, and but so when you were down there with Steve, and like honestly, it feels funny coming out of my mouth saying Steve, because my whole life it was just Coates.
Yeah, that's true.
So like it was, and honestly, I don't know if I ever met Steve Coates.
Oh, really?
Yeah. If I did, it was like, you know what I mean? It wasn't like he was around, but I feel like I know him because you've talked about him so much. So it was you and Coates and Beth, And I seem to recall you told a story about Thanksgiving.
Well, yeah. Sis was down there, and so they'd shipped her off, but it wasn't that far. It's only about 100 miles further north than where I was at. And so she called me and wanted to know if I wanted to come to Thanksgiving dinner. And so I left and hopped on a bus and rode up there and had Thanksgiving together with her.
That's cool. I can't even imagine. I mean, how many missionaries were in your mission?
It seemed like there was around 120, something like 120. The mission was relatively new. It was only 7 years old when I came. There were 2,000 missionaries in the whole mission. There weren't any missionaries in Bolivia or Ecuador at the time.
And when you say, 2,000 in the mission or in the mission field?
No,
Like
there were
worldwide?
2,000 members in our mission.
Oh, okay.
Just the members.
Okay.
But we were quite successful. We doubled the number. We went from 2,000 to 4,000 in the 2 years I was there.
That's awesome. What, as far as like your mission, did you ever have anybody call you anything but Elder Arnold?
Maybe. I grabbed one kid. He didn't think I understood what he was saying, and he called me a name that I didn't especially like.
Oh, I meant like your first name.
Oh, that one. Well, yeah, I used to ride the bus. We never had bicycles or cars. And the areas that we went into, a lot of them were just dirt road anyway. There was one area called Alto Selva Alegre, which means high, happy jungle. And there was dust on that thing. It was about an inch thick. Wherever you walked, it was just puffs. And they had a water spigot every other block. And that was the only water in that whole place. But anyway, I got quite friendly with the guys that run the bus. And this one guy one day wanted to know what my name was. And I told him it was PHILLIP, which means Philip in Spanish. And he said, no, I want to know what your English name is. And I said, well, it's Phil. Well, he couldn't pronounce that very well. And so the closest he could come was feo, which in Spanish means ugly. And so every time I'd get on the bus after that, he'd holler, and he'd be in the front of the bus, and I'd get on the back, and he'd holler out, "Hola, feo!" And everybody would turn around to look and see who that ugly American guy was that was friendly with this kid. But anyway, yeah, we rode the bus a lot.
That's cool. What was the coolest thing that happened on your mission?
Well, one of the most memorable, I guess, was that I was in Peru when John Kennedy was assassinated, the president, and they had these stone walls, and I was in Arequipa, and there was this guy that was a little bit off his rocker. I mean, he was. So anyway, he would sit on this rock wall and had a turban type thing wrapped around his head and a white sheet type of a thing that he had, and a wooden sword. And every time he saw us, he'd say, "John Kennedy, John Kennedy." And we'd try to work in that area, and he'd find us, and then we'd try to knock on a door we were tracked, and And he would come up behind us, you know, saying John Kennedy, and people would open the door and just slam it. They didn't want nothing to do with this crazy guy. And then he started to try to follow us home. And so anyway, we tried to get rid of him. And so we went down and got on the bus. And we figured, you know, he didn't have any money. He wouldn't be able to ride the bus. Well, he got on the bus anyway, and the old bus driver must have known him for driving around up there. He didn't say a word. He just let him ride. So we waited until we got next to our stop, and the bus started to roll again. And then we jumped out and figured we'd lose him. Well, the bus driver stopped again and let this guy off. Well, we didn't want him to know where we were living, so we started running. And all of these locals were watching. Here come these two big Americans. My companion was about as tall as I am, and we were just beating feet down this dirt road as hard as we could go. And then here come this crazy guy running after us, and it was like a delayed reaction. The laughter we could hear behind us. Anyway, we circled around and cut through this alley and got in the door and got the door shut, and then peeked out the window, and he's looking all around and can't find us, and he finally goes home. Well, we weren't too anxious to go back to that area. And we'd been about, I don't know, 3 or 4 weeks later. My companion and I were talking. We said, you know, that's the only street we haven't tracted where this guy is. And so we went back, and he wasn't there. And so we tracked it out that street, and we knocked on this one door, and this guy was a baker, and he was quite well to do. He had a pickup, which was unusual, a fairly new one. A young family, a guy and his wife and a couple of little kids. And he said, you know, I've been watching you guys walk up and down this street for a year, and nobody ever knocked on my door. And we ended up baptizing him and his whole family, which was quite an experience. We felt like that maybe somebody was trying to keep us away from that door.
That's cool. That is a really cool story.
But anyway.
No, that's awesome. What else was your mission like? I mean, what was the food like? I mean, you told me about Cokes and cookies every night, and you had a live-in maid that cooked every day.
Well, there you go.
I'm just telling you, like the Andy's mission, like you got your sister, you got your homies, you got your brother, and now you got like all. That sounds like the baller mission, man.
I'm telling you, I had a real good time while I was out. We worked hard, but we played hard. We had the food. You could get about what you wanted, but like I told you, I had maids that, and I got along well with the maids. They took my clothes to the cleaners, made my bed, signed my shoes. They would come in the morning and cook breakfast, and then they did all the shopping for the food and prepared it. And we had 3 hours off at noon. There was a siesta time, and all the shops closed and everything closed, and it was really uncouth to go knock on doors when during the siesta time. So we did not. And I'd come in from the morning after been tracting and stuff, and the maid would be there with some chilled vegetables floating in ice water and that I could snack on. And then that was the big meal for the day, and at noon. And then we'd go out in the evening, and then at night you were on your own. She'd go home about 4:35, but she did all the laundry and all the rest of the stuff. And so anyway, she cooked what we told her to cook. So I didn't eat out with the mission with the members hardly at all. We always ate it, and she cooked American food basically.
Okay, that's cool. So missions are different now as far as cash flow. I mean, like everybody pays the same, and everybody gets their missionary support fund. They always told me it was sacred money. It was almost like tithing, so I needed to be careful not to spend it, and yada yada yada. How did you like? Did your parents send you money directly, or was it from the church? I mean, how were missions paid for back then?
It came directly from my parents. What they did, I had a checkbook, and I'd go to the bank and cash a check every month. At that time, it was $75 a month, and with $75 down there, I could live pretty comfortably. Like, for example, you could go to a movie, which we were allowed to do for 25, 50 cents. I think I paid, when Cleopatra come out, it was a big deal, and I think I paid 75 cents to see that.
Oh.
But most of them, you could go to the cheap movie houses for a dime down there, and we paid the maid, as I recall, about $25 a month, and that was divided between 4 to 6 of us, and so we were paying the maid, $6 a piece to do all the work, which wasn't all that bad, It was, and so with $75, I did fairly well.
Did you have to pay for your own rent, utilities, and all those things, or was any of that covered by the church?
No, we had what we called the cat, and so the cat took care of the utilities and stuff, and I was usually the cat because nobody else wanted to do it, and I didn't care.
Word. No, that makes sense. I was just curious how how it was all broke down.
I don't remember paying rent. We paid for our food and for the maid, and I don't remember rent and utilities. I don't think that was part of it. I think the mission took care of that.
That's a pretty good deal.
Yeah, it was.
No, I'm telling you, like, that's baller. I got $300 a month. It was like, anyway. But when you were out on your mission, how many areas did you serve in?
I was in three different towns. At that time, the only place they had missionaries was on the coast, except for Arequipa. Arequipa was inland a ways. But I was in Lima, and then I was in Arequipa, and then I went up to Trujillo. Was the name of the other city. And at that time, there were no chapels at all, non-zero. And they started building a few. They had building missionaries that came down, and they finally built one in Lima. And they were working on one in Trujillo when I left. It was the second one they were building. Now there's, I don't know, 3 or 4 temples in Peru. When I went to Paraguay here a few years ago, a lot of the missionaries were from Peru. That was 50 years before when I was there, and the church has really grown.
That's got to be cool to see. I mean, just from 10,000 feet, I'm listening to this, and I'm thinking, when you got there, there was 2,000 members. And, like, the Andes Mission, I mean, it covered a good space.
Yeah.
And there was 100 of you. And now you go down, 50 years later, and you're having missionaries from Peru. You know,
Yeah, they were second generation members that were out in the field with us.
I mean, just to see that growth and know that you were a part of that, and that's gotta feel pretty good.
Yeah, it was. I'm quite proud of the area where I served. It's fun to talk to missionaries that are going there, and they asked me where I was at, and I said Peru. Well, what part? I said Peru. You know, I traveled a lot of the country.
That's cool. So like, so the Andes mission that covered, like you said, it cut out Chile, but was it? I say that wrong, Chile or I don't know.
Chile's good.
All right, not for me. I don't like Chile. I hate Chile. Michigan ruined me on Chile,
There you go.
but so it covered Peru. Any other countries?
Yeah, Peru, Bolivia, and Ecuador
Okay.
is what it was when I arrived. They started in Bolivia. They moved a few missionaries in there and opened it up about 2 months before I came home. It was just barely opening up, but that's where your cousin Reed went.
Yeah.
It was Bolivia.
I have a friend that served in Bolivia.
Really?
Yeah, after Reed.
Yeah,
He's
that was
much
a
younger.
long time ago.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know if I'm pretty sure I told you. I don't know if you remember or not. I did not know, but that Bob served in the Andes mission. I knew you did.
Yeah.
And so when I was in Michigan, my stake president asked me if I was related to Elder Arnold. So I naturally just assumed that it was you, but it might have been Bob. I don't know. Either way, he said that he knew Elder Arnold from the Andes mission. And
Everybody knew me, for good or for bad.
oh, I am. Oh man, that's yeah. I can see that. You and I are similar in a lot of ways. I'll just tell you right now. It's like and so that's awesome. When so I gotta ask, just because it's that question that's the uncouth question, but I gotta know, how many people were you a part of seeing being baptized?
That's an unfair question because because when I got there, 2 weeks after I got there, we baptized like 6 or 7, and but then I went when I was in Arequipa. There was we were teaching 4 or 5 people, and then I got transferred, and then they were baptized 2 weeks after I left. So to say how many as a total, I'd be hard pressed to put a number to that.
No, that's fair. And really, it's like when you look at it, it doesn't necessarily mean you were in your whites, in the water. It's how many people, that you were able to be a part of that. It was, just a loose question. And I know that it's one of those uncouth and unfair questions to ask missionaries. It's, it's always the how many people did you baptize? 32. It's like it's one of those questions, that
Yeah, right.
you don't break down like that. So that's why I was just curious, what kind of success it was like. You said you were in 3 areas.
Yeah, we had pretty good success in all 3 of them. We baptized 3 or 4 families, and they had 4 or 5 in each family that we dealt with, and a couple of brothers, and then we baptized a family, and they lived in a quinta, is what they called it. You opened a door, and it had opened, and then you went through it, and there was a bunch of houses on each side, and they had common walls, so it was almost like a hotel type of or a motel would be a better description of it. And after we left, that one family converted half the people because of that one family. Then there was a lot of people that was done. But we had one member though that didn't help us out much. we were teaching one of her friends, and we got to the word of wisdom. And she said, we told her that she needed to quit smoking. And she said, boy, that's going to be hard. And the member said, I had a hard time with that. She says, I told him I'd quit, and then I had just snuck out and got one and started smoking, and I cut down a little at a time until finally, now I've quit. And my companion said, well, if you were going to cut off a cat's tail, how would you do it? A little at a time, or once, or just once and get it over with? And she says, well, if I was cutting off a cat's tail, I'd cut it off a little at a time. I hate cats. and this gal never did quit smoking, and we never baptized her. So anyway.
It's awesome. I'm not much of a cat guy myself.
Nor am I. But that's, I can't say that because I've had a couple of cats in my life that I didn't. That's another story.
Yeah, we'll circle back to the cat thing. I want to just, we don't have much time left, but I'd like to, hit a couple more things about the mission, because seriously, there's a lot of things, that I've heard you talk about your mission, but not in such great detail. So 3 areas. What was the area you spent the longest time in?
And I was in Lima the longest. I was in 2 or 3 branches in Lima. There are 2 or 3 missions in Lima now, and so there was a lot of potential there.
So when you say you were in Lima, like, were you in the same spot, or did you transfer like different?
No,
like,
they had different.
or?
Yeah, they had different branches. There were no wards or anything at that time, and they were branches. And like I said, there was no chapels, and so they just rented a house, and most of them would have. 15, 20 people that were coming to a branch. And there were 6 or 7 branches around, and I was in 3 of those. While I was I didn't stay in the same spot.
Okay.
I was out in one, it was Barranco. It was out on, right on the beach, and I loved that place. You can't believe how many times I tracked it up and down so I could watch the water at night. And anyway, I'd take my companion down there and just sit out on the wharf and listen to the water. It was so smooth, soothing. And anyway, I love the water and the beach. So,
have you been back?
I never have. Always going to. When I got released, I had a short time because I left on my mission right as soon as I got out of college. I went 1 year as a freshman. And then I was gone for 2 years and 3 months. And so the summer was gone and school was going to start again, and I didn't want to lay off. So I had my choice. I could either go up to Machu Picchu, which I wanted to see, or my brother John and his wife were going to meet me in Mexico City and do a little traveling. So I thought, well, I'll come back to Peru. So I opted to meet my brother in Mexico City, and he picked me up. And when I climbed off the plane, he handed me a little Derringer 22. And he'd driven down there and had his car. And so we drove down to Acapulco, and I'm hanging out the window shooting the road signs with this 22 as we're going down the road. It's lucky I didn't get caught, but anyway. So I never did make it back. I've always going to do it, but I have not.
Well, I'll tell you, that is a trip I would go on. If you went to Machu Picchu, you can just count me in on that one.
Really?
Yeah.
You got a deal.
All right then.
I'll see you next month.
All right, book it up. Let's go. I mean, it's like it's practically free. So,
Yeah, really.
so John picked you up in with Gene. You're driving down to Acapulco. Did I say that right? You say it much cooler. You say it more sexy. You're like, you just rolls off your tongue.
Yeah, we went down there, and because I'd already been released, I could go swimming, and I remember running down the beach, and it was raining, but it was warm, and just running down the beach and feeling that warm rain. And then I swam out to this sailboat that was anchored out in the bay and back, and it was nice. I never felt a bit guilty about that one.
Oh, heck no. Heck no, that's cool.
And then they came home. They drove back. They did some more touring, and I flew into Los Angeles and then back into Salt Lake. And that was on a Sunday night. Monday morning, I was in class. I had no time off at all.
My man, that's a dedication. That's I feel you on that one. But sometimes it's nice to take a break. But on your way back, when you were touring with John and Gene, there is something to me that epitomizes you. It's like, lack of a better term, to me, it's your logo. And that's where you got it. So I would like to hear how you got your belt buckle.
My belt buckle?
Yeah.
Oh, dear. When we got through, we went down to Acapulco, and my parents had sent me an extra $100. And
let's put that in perspective. $100. That's a lot.
That was quite a bit of money. It was to travel on. And so anyway, we went down to Acapulco and went fishing for marlin and caught one. And anyway, and then we went to the Floating Gardens up to the Maximilian's Castle and to the museum, and did a lot of traveling around. And we was getting ready to come home, and I decided that John had been paying most of the bills, and so I pulled out my wallet and gave him all the money I had left and said, "Here, I'm going home anyway. I don't need any money." Then we went into the Mercado, and there was this belt buckle, and I wanted it. And so I told Johnny, "Give me some money back." And he says, "Well, how much do they want for it?" And I can't remember exactly. It was like $10. He says, "It isn't worth $10. It's only worth $5." And the guy knew how bad I wanted it, and so he wouldn't negotiate much. And so we left. Johnny wouldn't give me the money. He says, "If it's..." So we left and went out and got in the car. And here come this guy running across the parking lot with this belt buckle, and he said, "Okay, I'll give it to you for $5." And so I got the belt buckle, and I've been wearing it ever since. It's a Mexican calendar stone that I've just always wore it ever since. Everywhere I go, I got it on right now.
That's what I'm saying. My man. Like, it's to me, it is. It's your logo. There's nothing else.
Well,
except maybe your PA ring. But I don't know if you still wear that, do you?
No. In fact, I gave that to PHILLIP here on his birthday because he has the same name as I do, and he asked me several years ago. He said, "There's only one thing I want, and that's your PA ring." So I took it down. It had wore out. I wore it everywhere, pouring cement and everything, and it's 18 karat gold, and so the PA on the top it wore real thin, and the saddle that it sits in was worn out, and the onyx was about ready to drop out. So I took it down to a jeweler and had it repaired. And wrote it in my will that he should get that. And then I decided, you know what? I want to be around when he has it. So for his birthday last year, I gave him that. But I want you to know that in my will, you get the belt buckle.
My man, that's pretty cool. But I tell you, that's what I was gonna say. Is when things when you move on, there's only one thing. Well, there's only one thing I want. That's all your stocks, bonds, retirement funds.
Is that it?
No, I'm just kidding. We've talked about that. That belt buckle is like it's just one of those things. So, but that's super cool. I can't even tell you that those stories those are stories that I've never heard.
Really?
Some of them I have. And no matter what what they call you today or yesterday, I will never think of you as fail. Okay, I will never think of you as fail.
Well,
Because hey, in the end, I look a lot like you, and so I gotta man.
you for sure act like me. That's for sure.
So we're up on our time, but next time I want to circle back to a couple of things that you said. I'd love to talk more about Steve Coates. Love to talk about your family. I had no idea everybody served in the military. Anyway, but it's been good. There's a great lot of stories that you shared tonight from the mission, and I'm excited for hearing more. And again, just the comfort level that you're having, and I hope that you enjoy this as much as I have. Learning more about good hell. I the World Fair. That's that's awesome. So anyway, we'll wrap it up for tonight. You got anything left to add? You want to say?
Fort Lewis, Washington. That's where my brother was at.
Oh, okay, cool. So
I think it finally comes through.
Hey, man, that's the great thing. After I had my brain injury, that was one thing they told me is don't look things up. Make yourself remember. And sometimes, dude, it'll be like a day, and then it'll hit me, and I'll be like, oh, and I'll be so excited. I was like, I remember. But it's so easy just to go back and just Googleize that stuff. I'm only as smart as Wikipedia makes me. So, but anyway, we'll look forward to 2 weeks from now, and this was episode 3. So thanks again. Y'all have a great night.